the most efficient energy systems.
In recent years, childhood obesity has become a growing concern across the country. And in response, the Ministry of Education here in Barbados has implemented a new nutrition policy aimed at promoting healthier eating habits among our students. This is the People's Business. Good evening. I'm Teshia Hinds. Now, joining us are the Chairperson of the National Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition, Dr. Kia Lewis, Public Health Nutritionist Nicole Griffith, and Deputy Nutrition Officer acting in the National Nutrition Center, Payne. Good evening, panel. They will all have a chance to weigh in. Of course, you will too be able to join the conversation a little later by calling us on 228-5562 or 228-5563. Together, we'll explore the latest developments since the implementation of the school nutrition policy and the importance of promoting healthier lifestyles for our children. That's all coming up on this evening's presentation of The People's Business. Stay with us. Now, just shy of a month ago, on April 25th, all schools across Barbados saw the implementation of the Barbados School Nutrition Policy, and the Ministry of Education, Technical and Vocational Training, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness continue to work together to partner with ministries, parents, canteen concessionaires, vendors, civil society, and others to create healthier school environments. Now, when it was rolled out, that nutrition policy, there was some skepticism early on, not least of all from vendors.
I tried already, but they never buy. Like, I had apples, grapes, different fruits, and they never buy none. I had eaten them. Charity begins from at home. If you got your children, you don't get the fruits for early, you process them to them, it's obviously hard to come and buy them and eat them. You understand? Parents just go and say, not only buying from me, I see them in town shopping and snacks, they buy the snacks, carrying home for the children. So if the process the children into them sort of things, they're going to look forward for them. You understand?
All right, it's time now for our panel of experts to shed some light on the effectiveness of the recently instituted school nutrition policy and, of course, the impact we're hoping it can make on the health and well-being of our children. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Lewis. In your opinion, what are the potential challenges that schools may face in fully implementing the new policy, and how can we work to overcome them?
First of all, I want to say good night to you, Teshia. Thanks so much for inviting us to discuss this. This is very important, and I think that we can't get enough discussion surrounding it. So thanks so much for the opportunity yet again. As it relates to the challenges, I think that we're seeing them. We anticipated certain challenges. You would have highlighted the vendors and canteen concessionaires. And basically, what the lady was saying is that the children have a particular taste for snacks, and so it's difficult sometimes to change that taste. So I think one of the challenges perhaps is tackling that issue. What we have seen, though, in other schools, our model schools, for example, and schools that don't fall into the category of our model schools, but schools, canteen concessionaires that have opted just to offer healthier alternatives even before the school nutrition policy was rolled out, is that children are quite adaptable. We have found that in many instances, the children drink the water if it's the only thing that is offered. and they begin to ask for the healthier things as long as they are creative. So that challenge in terms of offering something new to children, I think that is something that can definitely be overcome. Another challenge, of course, is going to be with our parents, getting our parents to understand the importance of the policy and to buy into the policy, because of course we want the foundation of health and nutrition to be within the homes. The reality, though, is that I think that there's a lack of education among our parents, and that's something that we are tackling through sensitization, PTA meetings. We've been doing that for a number of years, but we're really ramping up our efforts. We've had several invitations to PTA meetings, and we've really been engaging with parents to kind of direct them in the right direction, help them to find healthier alternatives, show them the reason why it's important as well. The teachers would have voiced concerns in terms of being able to implement the policy, where do they fit in, and I think that the ministry has been trying to address a lot of their concerns. So yes, there are going to be challenges, but I think that as we go step by step, we are slowly finding solutions for these challenges.
All right, now, Brian, you are Deputy Nutrition Officer with the National Nutrition Center. Set the scene for us, because a lot of the times we don't hear or see a lot of the statistics that might be gathered behind the scenes about what truly is happening. So based on any empirical data that you have pulled together at the National Nutrition Center, what is the state of nutrition with our young people in Barbados?
I think the challenge with this, I think what we must appreciate first of all is that the school environment is an environment where children spend a large segment of their day, and you can imagine that as long as healthy behaviors are implemented within the school environment, we can imagine that these behaviors will transcend the school, of course, go into the home and the wider community. I think what we are seeing now is a higher prevalence or an increased prevalence of childhood obesity, and also the so-called non-communicable diseases, the diabetes, the cardiovascular issues as well, too, hypertension, elevated cholesterol levels. So we're seeing these more and more within school children. And of course, when I worked in the clinical setting more, you would generally see these these conditions in older people, in the 40s, 50s, 60s. But now what we have been seeing for the last decade or so is that we're seeing high levels of obesity, elevated blood pressures, elevated cholesterol within the pediatric population. And this in itself is very problematic, because we can only imagine that if a child is diagnosed with hypertension at a very early age, and they're receiving some kind of medical intervention they're going to be on medication for an extended period of time. So the idea of the Barbados school nutrition policy is to mold or to shape the school food environment to ensure that the healthy behaviors are the easier behaviors to follow, whether it be diet or whether it be physical activity.
All right, let's move on now to Nicole Griffith, who is a public health nutritionist. How, to your mind, how has the new school nutrition policy been tailored to meet the unique needs of, I would say, different sects or different segments of our communities, including those people who might have limited access to healthy food options for financial or other reasons?
Okay, so first of all, we started off at the Parental foundation level. We decided that we were going to, before even the policy was launched, that we were going to have a alternative snack and beverage list. And I know that some persons would have seen the categories of those snacks being displayed on social media, on different platforms. And so we went into we used the poverty map survey, which was done by the IDB a few years back, and we used that to be able to go into different areas, knowing the different levels of poverty within those different areas, and use the supermarkets, use the corner shops, use the wholesalers, anything that persons would have been using at the time this same time last year, we used that to be able to compile a list of snacks, healthy and unhealthy. We would have the price, the availability, how many people were selling it, how much of the item was being sold, and then we were able then to say, hey, these are the best options out of what we have available. And let's say, notice it says the healthy.
All right, we're going to try to get that rectified. We're having some challenges hearing you well. That's Nicole Griffith, public health nutritionist. So let's try to get that rectified. I'm going to come back now to you, Dr. Kia. I hope you don't mind me calling you Dr. Kia. But I know that there was a concerted effort over the last few years to curb the amount of sugar content, or get the soft drink makers to curb the amount of sugar they're putting into their drinks. We moved to have the costs go up. And there were a number of initiatives to kind of curb that. We know that our children indulge in a number of snacks that are manufactured in the region, and some of them are also manufactured here in Barbados. Are there any plans to move forward with getting these manufacturers to look at the way they put their snacks together, the snacks that they are marketing to children, which are very cheesy? They have a lot of sodium in them and things of that nature.
So, Teshia, first, let me start with the sugar sweetened beverage issue, because as you know, we would have had a taxation increase from 10% to 20%. So, as you rightly said, we have been dealing with the issue of sugar sweetened beverages. And the reason for that is that we know, or one of the major reasons, even within the schools, why the ministry would have decided that they do not want to allow any beverages with sugar, added sugars, is because we know that this is where the majority of the sugars that children consume come from. And there is a link between childhood obesity and overconsumption of sugar sweetened beverages. So yes, it was very important that we tackle that head on, and we have some control over that. So we're very pleased with the progress. That said, we do recognize that unhealthy snacks are also a significant threat. And so when we generated the alternative snacks and beverage list, like Nicole would have said, we looked at the nutrient content, and we would have put things in place to say, hey, if you want to offer a snack, we want it to be below this amount of sodium or below this amount of fat. Now, as it relates to tackling the manufacturers, we've been pushing for many years. We've been speaking about reformulation, but we know that businesses are profit driven. And so we are hoping, and actually what we're seeing is that some of the distributors and manufacturers are actually reaching out to us now to say, how can we get products that are in line with what you have listed? And so this school nutrition policy is actually helping us to sway manufacturers in the direction that we always wanted them to go. Another important thing, though, is going to be front of pack warning labels. You would have heard this in health spaces for a while. What are these? These are labels that say a snack is high in fat, high in sugar, or high in salt. That allows a consumer, typically the parent or even a child, to easily identify a snack that is not healthy, it's not in their best interest to have, and to make better decisions. So one of the things that we need to do as it relates to the manufacturers, speaking to them directly, is to push for a policy surrounding front of pack warning labeling. This is also going to force them in the direction of reformulation, because I can assure you that manufacturers do not want to have a whole cadre of offerings that are high in fat, sugar, and salt to be publicly displayed within supermarkets and shops. So these are things that we need to do. We need policy. Yes, we need discussion with manufacturers. Yes, we need, we had the reformulation workshop just last year with Ministry of Health. These things are healthy discussions. They are healthy ways that we can begin to move in that direction. But at the end of the day, it's going to require policy to help manufacturers to make better decisions in the interest of not only our children, but our nation as a whole.
Absolutely. And I'd like to, when we come back to you, this is something to think about the other people that we need to include as well, including fast food restaurants. And we have so many people who are roadside vendors and things like that, who are selling close to the schools and who the children continue to go out to. I'd like to hear about what the conversation has been like with them. But I'd like to go back now to Mr. Payne to talk a little bit about these consultations, and we know they've been widespread. So how does the new school nutrition policy, to your mind, compare with existing policies, maybe in other countries that have been successful in reducing childhood obesity rates?
I think what I would say first is that even though the school nutrition policy was launched at the start of the school term, the Ministry of Health and Wellness through the National Nutrition Center, we've been in constant consultation with the school meals department, providing technical assistance to them to continually improve the quality of their meals. We work closely with the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados in vendor training workshops in terms of training parents and guardians as well too, to sensitize them about the Barbados school nutrition policy and how it really plans to shape the school food environment for the better. As it relates to evidence surrounding school nutrition policies are policy-based interventions. Believe it or not, Barbados is actually one of the leaders, one of the leaders in the world. I recently attended a conference in Brazil, which was funded by PAHO and the World Health Organization, and Barbados is actually seen as a front-runner country. So I often tell people, don't see the Barbados school nutrition policy in isolation. I think we need to understand and appreciate that the Barbados school nutrition policy is but one policy in a suite of tools that the Ministry of Health and Wellness and a wide cross-section of stakeholders, including education, that we are in the process of implementing to not only shape the school food environment, but also shape the national environment. So whether it be push for front of package warning labels, taxation of sugar sweetened beverages, looking in terms of reformulation of high sugar, high salt, prepackaged foods. So there's a whole cadre of things that we're working on in the public health policy space.
Now, I think it's a great initiative to kind of turn our thinking on its head, because usually when we think about nutritionists or even public health nutrition, we think of older people. We think of people who might be suffering through NCDs and things of that nature. And then that's where we tend to start the conversation. So we definitely are happy to be able to start the conversation right now about what our children are eating. Coming up on The People's Business, we continue the discussion on tonight's topic, the Barbados School Nutrition Policy. That's all next. And we're going to encourage you to come on in with your calls as well on 228-5562 or 228-5563. Stay with us. Welcome back to The People's Business. This evening we are looking at the recently instituted Barbados School Nutrition Policy Plan for Term 3. And the way the language is structured, it says to us that, you know, it is not set in stone, which is always a good thing. We have Dr. Kia Lewis, who's chairperson of the Barbados Childhood Obesity Coalition, joining us today. Nicole Griffith, public health nutritionist, is also with us, and Brian Payne, who's deputy nutrition officer with the National Nutrition Center. I understand we have a caller on the line. Let's take a call quickly. Good evening. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening, Teshia. At least I have my cup of tea tonight too. And Miss Lewis, I talked to her early on the phone. Miss May, you leave me in dismay. But I want to say that in our early days, the most time we used to go to school where there's some greasy bakes or anything like that. If you check the school children bag now, they have more snacks in their bag than they have books. And that is one of the reasons too that we have a lot of this nutrition policy. We don't have to put the priorities from outside the gate when we get to school.
All right, well, thank you.
I would like the panel to talk on.
Thank you for your contribution. We understand that things have definitely changed. You know, he's making reference to greasy bakes, but I think, Even when we think about that, who we are as a people and a lot of, cultural nuances tend to tie into the way we eat as well. So that truly can influence any changes that we hope to institute. So let me go to you now, Miss Griffith. I'm interested in finding out whether you think, how you think this new policy can be successful, or in terms of how we can measure the success of the new policy. And we might need to defer to Dr. Lewis as well. So what are some of the indicators that you would be looking for to really evaluate the impact on childhood obesity as a nutritionist?
Okay, so at these early stages, we can't really tell you that or give you any statistics as yet, because it's very early. The policy has only been in schools for the last, say, 3-4 weeks. And so it's still yet young to say what the outcome will be, but we know that in other territories where it has been being used for a while now, that they have already been able to see the different outputs. Like, so you will see children will start choosing healthier options on their own without being forced to do so. We find that children are now in those territories where it has been already implemented. You find that you can already see trends that show that, obesity will. So we are looking at the trends, what may happen, what can happen. But here in Barbados, we cannot say as yet in 4 weeks that this has happened. There are less obese children, or there are less children with diabetes, or those type of outputs, because we haven't had enough time with the policy as yet. However, we are able to see that some persons or some students have already started to change their ways in terms of what they are going to select, in terms of things that they would choose on a normal basis. So some of them, yes, we still have the ones who will select, are still selecting items that, on the unhealthy side. But we also have those who will tell the others, hey, we're not supposed to have this. Maybe we could get it when we get home, or we can just have water at school today, and I'll bring water for you and you bring water for me. So those are things that we are seeing now. In terms of nutrition-wise, we won't be able to see anything as yet because it's still yet young.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. I wouldn't expect that you will be able to see anything. I was asking about what measures we can look for, what indicators there could be based on, your views as a nutritionist. And you pretty much explained that to us. So what are some of the indicators we can look forward to, or what will be the measure of success, in other words? And I'd like to go to Dr. Kia. Pardon? Continue, sorry. No, I was just saying one of the things that we will look forward to seeing is students selecting alternatives, and so you will see a decrease in the sales in those items that are, on the lesser healthier side. Okay, Dr. Kia, anything to add from you in terms of what are some of the markers, what are some of the indicators that will signal to us that we're making some inroads into the children, the impact of childhood obesity rates and things of that nature?
Teshia, that's an excellent question. It's always important to measure outcomes, because the reason that we have a policy is because we hope to see a change. For persons who are interested in reading the policy, on page 30, it actually outlines the measures that we're looking at. And we're hoping that by 2028, for example, we see a 10% decrease in overweight and obesity in children between the ages of 5 to 9. We're looking at a 15% increase, for example, in frequency of fruit and vegetable consumption. We're looking at a decrease in obesity in the other age groups. We are looking at things like a 15% decrease in the percentage of students who usually drink carbonated beverages 1 or more times a week or a day, because the statistics have shown us over 73% of our school-age children drink 1 or more carbonated beverages. So we're talking about soft drinks. We're not even including the sugar-sweetened beverages like the juice drink, the milk, but 1 or more carbonated beverages a day. So we want to see an increase in that. They're also looking to see an increase in the number of students who are involved in physical activity. And so these metrics, they might sound small, the 10%, the 15%, but in public health, these are big metrics, these are big numbers. And of course, we said by 2028, we're just in 2023, so we're going to continue to monitor consumption patterns. and physical activity, and of course, childhood obesity over time.
Sustained effort will be a major part of what needs to be done as well to keep it top of mind. Let's go back to the phone line for another caller. Good evening. Welcome to The People's Business.
Yeah, good night.
Good evening.
Hello?
Share your comment. Welcome.
Good night. Welcome. Good night.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Listen. I'm sitting here. I want to ask my panelists what capabilities that they're so sure that this nutrition policy is going to work, and if they are so sure in the long run, I would like to know why they feel that it will work. Because let me tell you something. This policy we're seeing with this children with obesity thing could be a genetic problem too, you know. The things go to the third and fourth generation of families and people and nations, okay? And I believe that it could be a genetic problem too, and you're also looking at that.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Kia, I'll defer to you on that. He says it could be a matter of genetics as well.
No, I want to make it clear. Obesity does, there are genetic factors that contribute to obesity. But many of the lifestyle-related things, such as obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes, they have a very strong lifestyle. They have very strong lifestyle components or risk factors. What the data has shown throughout the world is that the rise in obesity is related to the decrease in physical activity, and it's also related directly to the increase in consumption of ultra-processed foods, foods that are high in fat, high in salt, high in sugar, and low in nutrients. And so we can't rely on what we feel, we have to rely on what the data shows. Throughout the world, as it relates to school nutrition policies as well, remember that this policy, I shouldn't say remember, but for our viewers who might not know, this policy was actually crafted based on the World Health Organization. They have a policy document that outlines a framework for healthy nutrition within schools. And so this policy is heavily evidence-based. Policies like these have been rolled out successfully in other countries, and we have seen the reduction in the consumption of unhealthy foods and beverages. We've seen a change in the eating patterns, and we've also seen a reduction in childhood obesity in some of these territories. So we must always base what we are doing on what we can find in the scientific community, the evidence that is current, so that we're doing things that, that make sense. So yes, I'm going to say there is a genetic component to obesity, but more importantly, and to overweight, but more importantly, a lot of what we are seeing in terms of the increase in overweight and obesity among our young people is related to their lifestyles.
Now, back to you, Mr. Payne. I know that you mentioned earlier, I think if memory serves me correctly, you talked about the school meals department and a few of the changes that will be instituted with them as well. So talk to us now about the role of even parents and caregivers and what role they will have to play in ensuring the success of this new policy. And move a little further and talk about how they themselves can be encouraged to support healthy eating habits at home.
I think what I will say too is that the challenge that we don't appreciate for the most part is that taste preference develops in children from a very early age, from as early as 1 or 2 years old. So when a child comes into the school setting at maybe 3, 4, 5 years old, their taste preference may actually be already determined. So if a child is fed high sugar, high salt, high fat foods from very young, they're going to have the taste preference for those foods, and therefore they're not going to want to necessarily eat things like fresh fruits, vegetables, etc. Foods that don't have that high sugar, high salt taste. So the key thing here is that we must understand and we must appreciate, and we must do a better job, especially in terms of the National Nutrition Center, in terms of educating parents. We must talk more about the benefits of breastfeeding, and we must talk more about the benefits of a healthy diet and appropriate weaning foods for children from a very early age. So the idea is that we need to make sure that we sensitize or educate parents more so that they actually appreciate how taste preference develops and the repercussions of course, a child having a poor diet. So it starts long before children get into the school setting. So for instance, when the school meals department, when they've made all these shifts and they're now offering more fresh fruits, more vegetables, and if a child doesn't have the taste for these so-called healthy foods, then of course, they're not going to eat them. So the idea is that we need to engage with parents and guardians more to make sure that the intervention not only starts in the school setting, but it begins as early as in the womb or even or breastfeeding.
Now, Ms. Griffith, I know that there are some people who are misguided sometimes in thinking that they're eating healthily or they're drinking healthier beverages. There are a lot of people who talk about things like natural juices. And when they think about these natural juices, they think that people are just going with fruit and so on. Again, the nutrition labels are missing from a lot of these locally made and sometimes by very small manufacturers, very small business people. So what are some of the myths that we are working with in terms of people thinking that they're making healthier options, but they really aren't?
Oh, so I know that for us locally, I know that natural juices is one of those things that are very popular in our culture. And one of the things I could tell you is that we are so accustomed to our sorrel, to our lemonade, and those things. But most times, a lot of persons take advantage of that. And so in some cases, we have manufacturers, or I should say cottage industries, who, yes, will have those juices. And because we don't usually have labels on those items, or labeling is sometimes incorrect, we buy those items under the assumption that we are getting, say, it is pure golden apple juice. And then sometimes we have adulteration in some products. And so adulteration, we end up having some people mixing those things with other sweeteners. We have persons mixing those items with other types of packaged drink mixes. And so when we do that, then we are putting those persons buying those items are at risk of consuming things that they don't know what they're consuming, and two, they don't know how much of it they're consuming. And so with those natural juices, we really would like that those persons creating those, and we don't want to take away our culture. We would like that those persons would elicit the help of the analytical services department or the nutrition center to get those type of formulations, at a point where we can say, hey, if I'm getting this particular item and it's a natural juice or it's any other item that we may purchase that we may perceive to be healthy, that we know for a fact that that item is what it is and it's authentic and it's not adulterated.
Do you have anything to add, Dr. Kia?
Yeah, I just want to add to another myth. There's a misconception surrounding what is a juice and what is a juice drink. So when we talk about a juice, we're talking about something that comes directly from a fruit. There's no water, there's no sugar added. So if you squeeze an orange, what comes out there is juice. Many times what we are selling to people is juice drink. So you have a little bit of juice. If you check some of the packages, the boxes that we buy for our children, sometimes they're having 5% juice, 10% juice. And in extreme circumstances, some of them having no juice. So what they're having is colors, flavors, and you see things like high in vitamin C, high in vitamin A, or whatever, because they've added these things. And if you read the back of the label, they're extremely high in sugar, they're high in all kinds of artificial sweeteners, all kinds of things that are not helpful for the health of persons. So people need to know the difference between a juice and a juice drink. A natural juice comes directly from the fruit with nothing added. A juice drink will have water and sugar added. And we discourage the use of juice drinks because of the added sugar component. Some of them can have in as much as 10 teaspoons of sugar in one serving. And to put that in perspective, a child or a woman should not consume more than 6 teaspoons of sugar in an entire day when it comes to added sugars. Right? And in a box juice, you can have as much as 10 teaspoons of added sugar, sometimes more. So we need to know the difference between a juice drink and a juice. That's a common misconception.
I'm interested in having you weigh in, Mr. Payne. The myths that we're seeing with some of the options that we feel might be healthy options, but they really aren't.
I think sometimes words are thrown around a lot, whether it be words like natural, for instance. Natural meaning that it has no artificial sweetener. But again, the challenge is that sugar from cane or from beets or even simple syrup, these things are natural as well. Honey, these things are natural as well. I think what people fail to understand or appreciate is the calorie density of some of these drinks, whether it be natural or whether it be one of the sugar sweetened beverages, whether it be the juice drinks, whether it be the ultra processed snacks. They're very, very high in calories, and they're also very nutrient poor. And in the best case scenario, they may be fortified with some kind of vitamin or mineral as an afterthought. So the using the word natural, it really doesn't, and especially in the nutrition context, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. And I often, when I used to work in clinic more, I would often caution patients in terms of reading too much into these generic terms, whether it be natural, whether it be things like gluten free. So because these terms are used to describe the product, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy for that particular person or a particular group of people. And I think that's the problem.
All right, definitely a lot to think about. So once we talk about what are some of the myths or what are some of the things that that we shouldn't be using, then we naturally have to talk about alternatives. We'll look at those and more when the program returns. Welcome back to this evening's presentation of The People's Business. Is there an enforcement mechanism in place for the policy? That's one of the questions people were asking when it was implemented just over or just around a month or so ago. And it was put to the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw. Here's her response.
We are using moral suasion right now. We are not talking penalties. If it is not followed, the bad result will be that we end up possibly with a population 20, 30 years down the road that will not be able to contribute to the positive national development of Barbados. So the onus is on everyone to do what they have to do to play their part to ensure that we secure our future.
Moral suasion. To your mind, Dr. Kia, what has to be done to ensure that the new policy is sustainable in the long term? And by extension, what measures should be put in place to ensure continued compliance? And I know that you don't necessarily want to go with words like compliance and regulation, but those things are very important to be able to ensure that it is indeed sustainable.
I agree with you, but I want to say that the first step is always going to be education, because we need to get the public buy-in. So we need to continue our efforts on the ground to educate parents and teachers and vendors and canteen concessionaires, all the stakeholders, more importantly the students, so that they understand the importance of it and they can see their role in engaging in this policy. At the end of the day, like you have said, there's going to be at some point a need for some kind of legislation that backs the policy so that you're able to have a more successful level of implementation. Now, I wouldn't be able to speak to when that has to happen. I'm not in the legal sphere, neither am I a politician, but just to say that we would like to think in terms of reinforcement of the policy, that at some point in time, we will see some action as it relates to legislation. As you rightly said, if we're very serious about it, we're going to need to put a little teeth to it at some point in time.
Absolutely. I'm told we have a caller on the line. Let's head back out. Good evening. Welcome to the program.
Hello. Good evening, Teshia. Good evening, panelists.
Good evening.
Hi. I have a question. With regards to the country raising a lot of focus on food security, has the policy considered how do we make these fresh fruits and vegetables more available and cost effective? I think a large part of the problem is how expensive it can be to eat a diet which is contains a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is truly a legitimate question. I think they posed a similar question to you a little earlier, Mr. Payne, about, it being prohibitive for certain sects of community, certain segments of the community to be able to have access to, basic fresh fruit and vegetables and what we deem healthy foods?
Yeah, I think what I want to add before I even start is that some of the so-called unhealthy foods are also very expensive. And again, I think people tend to people buy these foods in many instances without complaint. So we also need to appreciate that as well too. And I think the challenges, as I mentioned earlier too, is that the Barbados School nutrition policy is not a standalone policy. I think we're currently looking at revamping or reviewing the quote unquote healthy basket of goods. And fruits and vegetables tend to have a significant role within any healthy basket of goods. And lots of these foods will tend to be VAT free or at least zero rated. So definitely there are efforts being made to address the high cost of things like fruits and vegetables. But the key thing here is that we must understand and appreciate that again the policy is not a standalone policy, and again it has many moving parts. So the idea of food security and us being nationally food secure and also food secure as a family, this also needs to be considered as well too. And the key thing here is that in terms of working with Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, we're working towards this so-called national food and nutrition security policy, which would highlight or which would address some of these challenges the typical or the average Barbadian would be experiencing.
We definitely need to make things far more accessible. And I hear you when you talk about the fact that some of the unhealthy food is indeed expensive as well. But I think we have to, keep in mind that we are trying to lure people to go in the other direction as well. So if they're already spending money on things that are tasty to them or appeal to them, the challenge will be to get them to go in the other direction. So I want to look at the actual policy itself, and we have a portion of it. Number 1 says the following foods or drinks will be allowed on school compounds starting term 3. Plain water or plain carbonated water. It talks about coconut water, 100% juices. Goes on to talk about plain yogurt and things of that nature. Ms. Griffith, let's talk about accessibility and whether these things are top of mind based on your experience as a public health nutritionist. Are people already, I know you talked about some of the choices different choices are already being made, but are people truly going out and selecting yogurt instead of, maybe a corn curl type snack for their children and things like that, based on your experience and what you're seeing in the communities?
Okay, so what we have seen, and this is being on the ground, we have realized that it is a slow process. It is very slow, and we have seen taking place is where we have one person will tell another person where they got something from, and they're able then to try it. And we found that it was, in terms of the water or sparkling waters, as you would have seen on the list, it was slow because it's a acquired taste. But for the ones that we have offered as options, we have seen that persons, if you go into the supermarket on some days, they will tell you we don't have that anymore, not until 2 weeks, because that has sold out, or this particular item has sold out more than this item. And a lot of times when we see, those items are the items that we have placed as alternatives. We obviously, again, is slow, but we are hoping to get more and more persons onto that train of selecting those particular items. Also, we, as it relates to the vendors who are going to be ones selling those items to the students and to the parents, we have those they will contact us at the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and they would ask us, hey, is this item that I'm about to purchase here in the supermarket good enough? And you will see that a lot of them are trying to comply for the most part. And so they will ask questions as it relates to what they're planning to purchase, or if we have an alternative item that we can give to them to purchase. So through them, we are able to sell the kids a healthier option as well. So it's slow, but I must say that it is coming along in terms of those items that we want to see being sold, and they are becoming more and more available as importers and distributors realize that this is where we are going, and they're willing to help in that step.
That's definitely encouraging. Now, Dr. Kia, you also mentioned earlier about the importance of continued and sustained education. Public education is going to be paramount. So how can the new school nutrition policy be integrated with other public health initiatives, that are aimed at reducing childhood obesity, such as physical activity programs and maybe community-based interventions and things of that nature?
I think teachers, we started primarily in the schools. So we've been going into the schools and doing the PTA meetings and talking to the children and those kinds of things. But within the policy itself, it does lay out the fact that they want to integrate more physical activity into the classroom itself and into the curriculum. So when you're talking about educational, they want to formalize that process. And I believe it was happening, but not at the level that it should happen. So, for example, you want to see in a maths class or in an English class, in what way can we integrate something physical into this classroom, or even something as it relates to nutrition into this classroom? So maybe in a math class, you can use a nutrition label to teach children how to multiply. You can look at the serving size and how you multiply that by the amount of sugar, for example, to work out the amount in a whole package. That's math, but that's also nutrition. So I think we have to look at creative ways of implementing it into the classroom. And then when we look at the community, we know that we're going in a direction, like we said, of a national nutrition policy. So we have to begin to look at ways to leak what we're doing into the school. We know that it's going to happen inevitably because children are going to take home the information. I say to people, teachers are powerful. The school is a powerful environment because children believe what their teachers say. So we know that children are going to take home the information. But when we look at the NTD Commission, for example, and what they have said about, the National Nutrition Policy and the different things that they want to see happen, they want to roll out, we recognize that there is room for partnership between all of these different policies. All of them require public education. And so if we can work together, we can see each of these policies rolled out in a more effective way in the community.
Mr. Payne, what are your thoughts on incentivizing making healthier choices, not only for children, but for, parents and members of the community as well? Because some people could, believe that giving incentives to do these things can backfire in some instances. So what part can that play in this entire thrust to make people make better choices or to help them make better choices?
I think the key thing here is that I think we again, when we look at the school community as a whole, I think the Barbados school nutrition policy really encourages parents, teachers, guardians, persons who work in and around the school and in the immediate environment of the school. We encourage them to model these so-called healthy or these health-seeking behaviors. I think that's important. In terms of providing incentives, let's say to schools or parents, or I think there's some place for that. But it really comes down to determining what incentives work best. Is it a case where a school, based on their level of implementation of the Barbados school nutrition policy, are they going to receive some kind of concession or some kind of additional funding or some kind of corporate sponsorship? I think that's important as well too. So incentive definitely can be used as a good driver to encourage school administrators, teachers, parents, and children to really implement the Barbados school nutrition policy and also other healthy behaviors. And the key thing there is that we need to ensure that that we monitor the progress of the policy, or we monitor the interventions in a systematic and a meaningful way as well too, so we can actually determine who would deserve the incentive more so.
All right, we have another caller on the line. Remember, you can call us on 228-5562 or 228-5563. Make your comments or pose questions to our panel. Good evening. Welcome to the program.
Yes, hello, good evening. I would like to suggest that, consideration be given to reducing the amount of money that the child has to take to school. Because if a child has $10, he's more inclined to buy more snacks than the child who only has $1 to take to school. I don't know if you can look at it from that angle as well.
Thank you. I'll defer to Dr. Kia on this one.
I want to thank the caller. That's one of the things that I've been telling parents in PTA forums for years. I say if you don't give them a lot of money, they can't buy unhealthy things. That said, we understand that children will want to buy things and that schools will need to have fundraisers. And so that is why it's important that those things which are sold are things that are safe for children to consume. So yes, there's the argument, don't give the children a lot of money, but when we have fundraisers, the vendors still have to live. The canteen concessionaires still need to make money. And certainly the PTAs and the teachers need to raise funds for graduation. We've heard that. And so I think what we need to, and this is a step that we've taken, is move towards offering things that are healthier within the school environment so that you can freely give your children money to support all of these people and all of these different ventures without worrying about the negative impact on their health.
Ms. Griffith, do you have anything to add, from your perspective as public health nutritionist about maybe giving children less money? I know as a parent, sometimes that can be a little challenging. Particularly if the children are, they're kind of engaging with their friends and they might want certain things. It can be a little challenging, but your thoughts?
Well, the giving less money to a student, yes, that's one option, but ultimately we will let them to be able to grow into a person who selects a healthier lifestyle overall. So instead of giving that money, being able to, again, as Kia said, use education. So during using the school curriculum, using after school activities, using different portions of or different aspects of school to show them how to select items using the money they have, but selecting healthy items. So instead of kind of restricting them when it comes to money, because that doesn't work with every child, because a child will find a different route to get that particular item. What we want them to do is to put healthier lifestyles into practice so that they go into the schools, when they come into school or go into the community, that even if they have $100, but they have an apple for 50 cents, that they will select that apple instead. So we want to curb bad habits and get into healthier lifestyles. So we wanted to have that ingrained in them rather than having to use these type of penalties like taking away money or reducing money. Letting them have the money, but being able to use it wisely and be able to be good as it relates to consumerism and those things. That will pay off for the long haul rather than taking away the money up front.
I see your point. They might feel like it's some type of punishment, so that can be counterproductive. All right, we're going to take another break and come on back as we get ready to present the final segment of this evening's presentation. All right, welcome back to the People's Business. We have two questions from social. The first one, I'm going to throw it out. Someone is asking about the percentages in terms of the empirical data that's available, the number of children who are living with NCDs or who are obese. Do we have those figures? Dr.
Who are either overweight or obese. Yes, our data has shown us, the last data that we had showed that 1 in 3 of our children in Barbados is either overweight or obese. So we do have data on that. As it relates to the NCDs, I don't have that data in front of me. But like we've been saying in clinical practice, we've been seeing an increase in NCDs among young people.
All right. Now, in closing, are there any potential unintended consequences of this new policy? And I asked that question specifically because in speaking with the young people around me, a lot of them have been telling me the children are skipping lunch where they can't access certain things at school, and they're accessing after school. So, you know, with these unintended consequences that might pop up, you know, how can they be mitigated? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Payne.
Sure. Again, thanks again. I think as the policy move forward, as we move forward with the policy, I think we're going to see lots of things that we didn't really kind of bargain for, and I think we must understand that this policy this is a long-term project, and we know that there are going to be some teething problems early in the project. But the idea is that as we work to improve the school food environment and educate the children and the teachers and the parents especially, that we will see less of that behavior. So I mean, so seeing children skipping lunch and possibly buying something from a fast food eatery, we understand that practice would happen. But I guess it really speaks to a larger situation, a larger nutrition situation where the question is that should a fast food eatery be within a walking distance of a school? So there are a whole host of questions that need to be addressed and answered. But the Barbados School Nutrition Policy is just one component of a larger public health mandate.
Okay, Dr. Kia, final words from you.
I just want to say that this policy is extremely important. I want to encourage persons to support it. Parents, we need you on board. Teachers, we need you on board. Canteen concessionaires, vendors, manufacturers, we need you on board. We need to protect our children. We didn't get to discuss the issue of advertising unhealthy beverages and snacks within schools, but that's also something that we want to see end. So we just need a whole of society approach, all of the sectors working together so that our children can have a healthier environment to grow up in and they can make better choices going forward.
Ms. Griffith, 30 seconds, it's all at you.
Okay, so I just want persons out there to know that there are ways that they can get help. So if there is that they want to have help, they want to know stuff about the policy, if they want to know what they can do, they can just reach out to the Heart and Stroke Foundation. We are here to help. We are here to guide you through the process, and to remember that in everything is going to take time, but at the end of this, we hope that we all come out better. Thank you.
All right, and thank you so much. I want to thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. You've definitely left us with a lot to think about. And I think we all have the best interests of our children at heart, and that is the most important thing that we need to move forward with. Thank you so much. We had this evening on the program Dr. Kia Lewis, Public Health Nutritionist. Dr. Kia Lewis, who is, of course, the chairperson of the National Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition. We also had Public Health Nutritionist Nicole Griffith and Nutrition Officer acting in the National Nutrition Center, Brian Payne. I'm Teshia Hinds. On behalf of the entire crew, have a good evening and have a wonderful week.